So I'd like to introduce Senator Frazier. He began his legislative service in 1993, first in the Mississippi House of Representatives, followed by his current term in the Senate starting in 2006. Senator Frazier was born in Jackson, Mississippi, and we'll be hearing quite a few stories from his extensive background. I will share a full bio in the chat so that if you'd like to look into it, but I don't want to spoil too many of his stories for you. But just a few because he is so distinguished. His extensive educational background includes George Washington University, Jackson State University, the University of Virginia, the University of North Carolina. But as a lifelong learner, he even graduated summa cum laude from Hines Community College in December of 2012. And that was in automotive collision repair technology. So as we can see, Senator Frazier's never thought to stop with education, which is wonderful. Quite a few achievements. He led legislature in Mississippi to be the last state to finally ratify the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Authored a bill making Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday an official state holiday, and is part of the commission that redesigned the state flag. He's been the recipient of many national and international awards. Extensive travel includes projects in Albania, Amsterdam, Azerbaijan, Germany, Ghana, India, so on and so forth. And so without further ado, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Senator Frazier. We look forward to your stories.
Thanks, Dan, and good evening. First of all, I would like to thank the Oakland Club, Rotary Club, for inviting me to participate in the conversation tonight. I'm so happy to be here. And I also would like to give a shout out to the Rotary Club in Mississippi, my good friend, Barbara Travis, and the others, because Rotary is a very important organization in the state of Mississippi. They've been very active in doing many things. We just had a severe water crisis in the city of Jackson. And the Rotary Club is very instrumental in giving bottled water to a lot of the recipients who were without water for many, many weeks. So they're very helpful. And also, one of my favorite Rotary members is John Grisham, who was my desk mate in the Mississippi legislature. Before he became a famous author, he served in the Mississippi legislature, and he was my desk mate in the House of Representatives. He wrote his first novel, A Time to Kill, while sitting next to me. And folks wouldn't buy it because they didn't think it would sell, but look at him now. He's an outstanding author. He sells many, many books every year, so he's a very outstanding person. And he made very good contribution to Katrina in terms of raising money to help those Katrina victims. So I'm very happy with him and for the Rotary Club for doing all of the state of Mississippi. So shout out to my good Rotary friends from Mississippi who are tuning in tonight. But first of all, a little bit about me. I am the product of the Jim Crow South. I mean that when I grew up, segregation was the law of the land. It was separate equal. In my neighborhood, we had two schools. We had the George Elementary School for the white kids and the Martin Elementary School for the black kids. Although George was close to my home, I was forced to go to Martin Elementary School. And also at Martin Elementary School, we received the hand-down books from George Elementary School. And the teachers didn't use that as an excuse. They made us learn and they made us dream. They taught us the difference between dreaming and daydreaming. They told us to prepare ourselves because change was coming in Mississippi. So I'm so proud that they prepared me at that level, Martin Elementary School, for what I'm doing today. Because of that background, I was able to go to college and be very successful. But once I finished, I came back to Mississippi. I came back to Mississippi to work in legal services. But before I did that, I went to Jackson State, and something happened that changed my outlook on things in terms of my fight for social justice. When I was a student there, we were very heavily engaged in the Vietnam War. And my school protested the Vietnam War, Jackson State University. And one night we were studying, and I decided to take a friend of mine to get a hamburger. So as we left and tried to get back on campus, we were stopped by a police person. He said that you can't go back on campus tonight because we called every ambulance in town. There's going to be trouble. So I pleaded with him, and he finally relented and let me go back to the campus. So I was driving a friend back to her dormitory. We saw these officers marching toward the dormitory, and all of a sudden they started firing. So wound up killing one of my classmates and another student, and also injuring many different students. Before that point, I was very focused on becoming a college professor. But after the incident, I decided to change my focus to focus more so on how I could change things socially in Mississippi. So as opposed to going to grad school to get a PhD, I went to law school in DC and came back to work in that field. Once I came back, I worked for legal services before I got involved in politics in terms of trying to elect someone as governor who changed the state. I believe in William Wynn at the time. He was called an ultra liberal by some of the conservatives in the state. Very, very nasty word. He lost that race, but he won later on and became governor of the state of Mississippi, changing things for the better. But after that race, I was approached by Buddy Newman to work for the House of Representatives as his lawyer. This is very interesting because Buddy Newman was a segregationist. He stood with Ross Barnett, keeping James Mitter from integrating the University of Mississippi. But one thing about Buddy Newman, he could count. He knew that Black folks were beginning to vote in the state of Mississippi, and they wanted to make sure that Blacks were able to participate in the process. So he hired me to be his lawyer, and we had many different conversations about his background and his philosophy and different things. But during that tenure, they decided to redraw the lines in Mississippi. We redraw the lines every 10 years for representation. So in my area, they redraw the lines, and his cousin stayed in my district. His cousin was going to run, but Newman wanted him to run for another term. But the folks in my district wanted another choice because they wanted social change. So they asked me to consider running for that position because they knew that I knew the system and I'll be able to help bring about social change in the state of Mississippi. So when Buddy Newman heard that I was thinking about running against his cousin, something interesting happened. He sent some of his colleagues to my office at the Capitol with a message. The message was that they liked me and the speaker liked me, but they liked me just where I was. They wanted me to play that role in terms of staying right there as opposed to doing anything different. But I told them that I was listening to the folks in my area and they wanted another choice. And this choice was bigger than the speaker or his cousin. So I decided to run for that position. Well, a couple of days later, they came back down with another offer. They said, if you don't run against the speaker's cousin, we would fully finance your campaign next time around. Because if he runs, if his cousin runs and reelected, he'll be vested in the retirement system and he will be able to draw his retirement. So I said, well, no go. Since my folks want me to run, I decided to resign from that position. I ran and very successful in beating his cousin and other folks too. So that was my first adventure into elected political office. But one thing that Buddy Newman realized is that he tries to put the best people in positions that would help him. He knew that I knew him, I knew the system, the rules. So as opposed to punishing me for running against his cousin, he put me on some very choice committees. It's very unheard of for a person to serve on the Ways and Means Committee. I serve as the chairman of the committee and also serve on the Legislative Oversight Committee. So he put me in those committees as a freshman member. But that was just the beginning of my steps toward changing things in Mississippi. The first change that I knew that we had to do socially was to change the rules of the Mississippi legislature. When I was first employed by the House in 1975, it was basically all mill and all pale. We only had one African-American member back then. It was Robert Clark from Ebenezer, Mississippi. But when I was elected, 13 of us came in at the same time, so we were beginning to increase our numbers. Today we have over 51 members of African descent, and also have several women serving the legislature. So we had to put things in order to advance socially in the state of Mississippi. So we were able to do that, and because Buddy Newman saw that the change was coming in the state, he decided to retire as opposed to embracing the change that was taking place in the Mississippi legislature. He said that he was used to doing things the old way and he wanted to make progress, but he didn't want to be an obstructionist. So as opposed to seeing how we were changing things and being a part of the change, he decided to retire from the legislature. And we elected another speaker who helped advance the change and worked very hard with our newly elected governor, William Wynn, who was successful in running the next 4 years as governor of the state of Mississippi in terms of setting things in motion for different changes. One of the biggest changes we tried to make at that time, during my time in the House, was changing the state flag. A lot of us introduced bills year after year trying to change the state flag because it has the Confederate emblem as part of the flag, and that flag didn't represent everybody in this state. That became even clearer to me when I was doing some work in South Africa, because when they went from apartheid to inclusion, when Mandela was elected, the old flag came down and a new flag went up that represented all the folks in South Africa. So I said that we're going to have to make the change to the flag that would represent all the folks in the state of Mississippi. So we did that. And also in our research in college, I realized that we never did ratify the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. And I said, we're going to have to do that to make sure that we send out the right message to other folks in the state that we are making progress in the state of Mississippi. But when I moved to the House, Governor Musgrove was elected and decided to set up a flag commission to come up with a new design for a state flag. And that was very, very contentious back then because a lot of folks didn't want to change the state flag because they said it was their heritage. But let me read you a letter that I received back then. We were trying to change that flag. There's an email I received from a member of the Tea Party, and I'm going to quote it exactly, followed by a letter that I received from one of his colleagues. And I quote, "The danger to America is not Barack Obama, but a citizen capable of entrusting a man like him with the presidency. It will be easier to limit and undo the follies of an Obama presidency than to restore the necessary common sense and good judgment to an electorate willing to have such a man for their president. The problem is much deeper and more serious than Obama, who is a mere symbol of what ails us. Blaming the Prince of Fools should not bind anyone to the vast confederacy of fools that made him their prince. The republic can survive Barack Obama. It is less likely to survive the multitude of fools, such as those who made him the president." After I received an email, I received a letter from a young man from North Mississippi. He said, "Senator Frazier, I would like to give my version about the flag of Mississippi after reading an article in the Daily Journal. I know it is hard to please everyone. It can't be done. According to the Declaration of Independence, the 13 stars represent 13 original colonies, which has nothing to do with slavery. It also represented one nation under God. 13 is unlucky to the devil, but not to Christians. There were 12, and then the Son of God made 13. God allowed his chosen people to be slaves 400 years under the Egyptian taskmasters. Why do slaves in the U.S. think it is a disgrace and want someone to pay for it? If God had not allowed the black man to be sold into slavery in the U.S., where would they be today? In Africa. If they're not satisfied with the privileges and opportunities they have in the U.S., give them a one-way ticket to their homeland, Africa. As the article stated, some stubborn individuals don't want to let go of the past. It was no disgrace to be a slave, and they helped to make the nation out of this land. The Black people should be proud of what their ancestors did as slaves. I have taught some things to Blacks and have many of them as my friends. I've also learned from some of them. I say, make the flag as it is, the state flag. Don't let Russian leaders be right. After World War II, he was asked, who could destroy the US? It will be destroyed from within. And it ended by saying, Paul Harvey's comment on July 1 noon said that we're on our way to destruction. I'm just a country boy. I fought for this country and I do it again. Senior citizen Hugh Cobbs. Now, this is the type of opposition we face when we're trying to change the state flag in Mississippi. Although we had a chance to have meetings all across the state, these Hugh Cobbs and others like them came to the meetings and they dominated the meetings with personal attacks on commission members and also intimidated a lot of those in attendance. But we had a vote on the flag back then, but that vote failed at that particular time we voted on it. But this past spring, something happened. We saw what was happening nationwide with the social justice movement, with the killing of George Floyd. We had the biggest protest rally in the city of Jackson that was led by young folks in the state of Mississippi. They came from all over in big numbers. And so they protested and they said that flag should come down. So we looked at that and we started talking to one another. That was the key. And also we had leaders in the House and the Senate who saw that time to address that flag. So the Speaker of the House, along with the Lieutenant Governor, worked very hard with some of us who advocated for many years to get the votes to pass that, to adopt a new flag. But something else had happened that really played to our advantage, that pandemic, COVID-19. Because of that, we had to expand our session. We're not limited to a 90-day session to address that issue. And because we had more time to address the issue and get our support, we were able to garner enough support to pass a new flag for the state of Mississippi. First of all, because the young folk got involved, and also the business community saw that they were losing money, and also the athletic sports throughout the state, all the schools got involved because they said they were hurting the recruitment. And also the faith-based community got involved for the first time in this fight. They said it was time to make that change, and everything happened at the same time. So we made that change for the flag. And that was a step in the right direction. But it happened because we had a chance to sit down and have honest discussions with each other, real dialogue. We had to understand that we had to see their position and to see our position. And because we had an honest dialogue, we were able to make that a big change in the flag. In terms of our ratifying the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, that was a story in itself because after doing research, I realized that we didn't ratify that amendment to the Constitution. Slavery, quote unquote, was still legal in Mississippi in theory. But we were able to present that resolution to our legislature. And believe it or not, we had some members who wanted to resist that, but they didn't want to go on the record voting against it. So we were able to bring it before the body, and we got very good support from the public and also from the press in terms of getting that issue straddled before the people in the state. And because we were able to have dialogue with our colleagues and also get other stakeholders involved, we were able to finally ratify the 13th Amendment to the Constitution 130 years later because of that. And that was very, 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 very important. But in terms of social justice in the state, we have had a chance to address many different issues in terms of social justice. One of the big things we did was to address our educational system in the state, make sure it was properly funded. And that is one of the best ways you can improve things in the state, by making education a priority and also making your expenditure of state funds in a way that would benefit everybody at the same time. During Buddy Newman era, he was more interested in a strong backbone, muscles as opposed to a strong mind. We had to change that dynamics, the conversation on that. We had to let them know that in order to attract industry in the state, we had to have educated workforce and a very trainable workforce as opposed to strong muscles. And we were able to do that and put money into education, better fund higher education, K-12. And by doing that, we were able to attract industries like Nissan and other big companies, Toyota, because we were to put money what means most. But if you're going to have social change, you're going to have to do different things in terms of changing the dialogue. You have to have conversations with everybody, have to know what's going on, and make sure that you do the right thing to push things forward. You also have to have a commitment to social change. One thing that helped me become more committed was my upbringing. I came up in the Jim Crow South. I had teachers who instilled in me the burning desire to make things better for those who come behind me. And I also had teachers who exposed me to different things. I went from college to universities to whatever. They exposed me to different things and expanded my way of thinking, and also equipped me to take on the task. But I know you have plenty of questions, but let me end by sharing one story with you. I'm reminded of a king who decided to get the feel of his community. So he decided to get one of his servants to put a big stone in the middle of the road. So they put this big stone in the middle of the road, and when they did that, the king hid in the bushes to see exactly what would happen. As he sat there, he saw different people coming by. First, we had the big nobleman coming by, and they saw that big stone in the road. And so they were not very complimentary of the king. They said that out of all the things, he can't keep a better road than that. You had the bankers and other big dignitaries coming by, and they, as opposed to doing anything about it, they just cursed the king for letting the road fall in disrepair. Finally, had an old farmer coming with his ware, with his vegetables going to the market. He was struggling, but as he approached that big stone, he said, "Well, let me put my props down." So he put them down. He got behind the stone and pushed and pushed and pushed and got it out of the way. And as he was going back to his cart, he saw a sack. In that sack, he had some gold coins and a letter from the king. And he said that this coal is for the person who moves an obstacle from the road. As a change agent, you're going to have social change in your society. You're going to have to be in a position to make changes, move obstacles out of the road. That's how I viewed my role as a legislator, as a community active in our state. My job is to move that obstacle. But in order to move that obstacle, you have to prepare yourself for the job at task. You're going to have to know the rules of the game, because you're going to play by those rules to your advantage. We play by those rules to make changes in the state of Mississippi. And we're doing that as we speak going forward. But like I said, one of the biggest things we enjoyed this past session, this past year, was changing our flag, because folks got involved. They set up a commission. They sent in over 3,000 designs of flags. So we finally decided on one, and the folks voted on the flag, and over 70% of the folks voted for a flag, a new flag for the state of Mississippi that represents everyone in this state. But I know you'll probably have different questions about some of the things that we're fighting on here and some of the things that we're doing to bring about social change. But I'd be glad to entertain the different questions you have at this point.
All right, it looks like we have a question from Lisa. I looked at the shape of your district, and I'm wondering if there's any prospect of fair redistricting in Mississippi.
Very good question, because every 10 years we do redraw the lines in the state of Mississippi. When I first ran for office, my district was a pretty balanced district. I had some very conservative folks in my district. In fact, I went campaigning one neighborhood and knocked on the door, and a conservative white gentleman, and he was not very candid, but he said, "Get off my porch and take that nigger with you." I had a young woman campaigning with me, so that mindset was there. We drew the lines, and now taking in one of the most conservative cities in the state of Mississippi, Clinton, Mississippi, as a Baptist city. But I get very strong support from that district. In fact, I'm thinking about Clinton, Mississippi. That was the beginning of the end of Reconstruction, when they assassinated Charles Cotwell, who served as this Black senator from the district during Reconstruction. But we are going to redraw the lines. And like I said, if you make a record, very open with the folks, very honest with people, you don't care how they redraw those lines, because you have a message and folks buy into it, you're going to be successful. We have to make sure that we have properly drawn lines every 10 years. And I've been able to serve on the reapportionment committee every year since I've been in the legislature. And I look forward to redrawing those lines again once we receive the census figures. But we will be doing that. We're going to do it the right way to make sure that we be very inclusive. But every time we redraw the line, our legislature becomes more diverse in terms of women and other minorities in the state of Mississippi, and it's very good. You need everybody at the table to make an impact, to make things different in the state. And so that's our goal. When we draw the lines, make sure that we make it feel even, so everyone have a fair share in terms of representing folks throughout the state.
Great. Well, we got a couple more questions that just came in. So as non-elected members of the public, what do you think the best way for us to get involved is and to make changes? Writing letters to our representatives, or is there some active participation you can recommend?
That's a very good question, because the young folks got involved and they made things happen this past summer in terms of changing our flag. The most effective way to make things happen, influence legislators, public servants, is to contact them directly. You could visit them in the office, you could call us on the phone, you could stop at our house, stop at the grocery store. The important things to make sure you maintain contact with them. Oftentimes, officials are elected, but they're not held accountable for anything they do while they're in office until election season. It's very important to maintain constant contact with officials every day. When you have an issue that of interest to you, contact your legislator to let them know how you feel about the issue, because believe it or not, someone who might have an opposite view might have the ear of that person. But by contacting the legislator or an official directly by phone, visiting in the office, sending an email, that's very effective in terms of getting us to move. And that's more effective than a form letter. I receive many different handwritten letters, and I read them all. I receive a lot of emails. I try to read all of those too, but I believe that we should encourage people to participate in the process, because by doing that, you're going to have a better product in the end and a more educated citizenry, and it's very important.
Thank you. Let's see. How are the citizens of Jackson doing? Are they recovering? It seems to have fallen out of the news cycle.
Well, like I said, I'm glad that the Rotary stepped forward in terms of making a big difference in Jackson, in terms of supplying water for a lot of those families who had no water. We were without water for many days, and the ice storm didn't help at all. But the water system did break down. It did not serve us properly. But now the water system is up and going. The water has been tested, and it's safe to drink right now. But we're still coming up with additional resources to assist the city of Jackson addressing that problem. Jackson, like many cities, have major infrastructure problems, infrastructures that have been neglected for many years. What contributed to our problem in Jackson was that we had old pipes underground that have been there for over close to 100 years, and they were never replaced for some reason. And so it finally caught up with us during this water storm, water crisis. But we are directing that, coming up with state dollars, and also under the new act that passed in Congress recently, there will be additional money that the city of Jackson can access to address the water problems in the city of Jackson. And also we're going to also use bonding on the state to address some of their needs in terms of building up the water system for the city of Jackson and other cities that have similar problems.
Thank you. All right. Next question I have. Hello, Nguyen from Houston. Curious to ask, as an Asian American, we are currently facing hate crimes in the United States. I'd like to know what can be done to stop this.
That's a very good question. One thing that I've been telling my people is that you still have that fear factor in America. You have it in the South, you have it all over. The fear factor because folks don't know, and they fear the different racial groups that they're coming into contact with. In Mississippi, for instance, right after the Civil War, should I say before the Civil War, you only had one voting bloc, and that was a white male voting bloc. But after the slaves were free, you found that the Black male was a majority in the state of Mississippi, because they brought in the Black male slaves to make Mississippi the fourth richest state in the nation. And they produced for the state of Mississippi. But once they received the right to vote, the power structure resisted that, because they knew that change would be coming. As a result of the Black vote back then, they were able to elect 64 members of Mississippi legislature, and also 3 out of the 7 statewide officials, because the demographic of the state, the voting demographic had changed. The power structure feared that demographic. They feared it. I think that in order to address the violence we're having against Asian Americans in this country, we're going to have that dialogue to let them know that Asian Americans, like other Americans, want the same thing for our country, to be great, to prosper. They want their kids to have the same opportunities other children in this country, a quality school system, a good job, and all of that. But it's going to have to start with dialogue, talk with one another. In our state, we still have some who you have to drag along to the 21st century, but you still have to talk, have the dialogue. You can't leave them alone. You have to have a conversation with them. If we had not had the conversation with Buddy Newman, our speaker, who's still with Ross Barnett, he would still have been resisting some of the changes that were taking place in the state of Mississippi back then. But I found out that if you have dialogue with them, you're going to have opportunity to opportunity to change their minds, to be more accepting of different folks in society.
Thank you. I have a couple more. And let's see. When faced with such bigotry, how do you find the courage and positivity to keep going?
Well, we have no choice. I looked at the fact that our folks put in these positions to make a difference in their lives. And as a legislator, our major job, one of our major jobs is to educate our own constituents, our own colleagues. In the Senate, for instance, a lot of our colleagues never had really much contact with other minorities, women or African Americans or other members of survey. Once they get here, we have a chance to work on committees with them. Once we have those, once we have a chance to work on committees, we have a chance to change ideas and get to know each other. I'm thinking about what happens every year. Let me bring this to your point. When we went from one Black legislator to the 13, we had one of my colleagues by the name of David Green, who was an African American. We had another white colleague whose last name was Green. White legislators always met up at the patio club to have their meeting before the meeting, decided what plans they would have. But on this occasion, they sent out an invitation to Representative Green, but little did they know they sent it to the wrong Green, the African-American David Green. So when he showed up at the patio club, they were very shocked to see him there. And he was very shocked that no one else of his color was also present. But we use an example in terms of how we can make things happen, how we change things. We let them know that they had these white exclusive male clubs trying to make decisions for the folks in the state. We had a chance to expose that evil. And by exposing the evil and also educating our colleagues in terms of what we should be doing to elevate the state, it made a difference in terms of bringing the state along slowly. You're going to find folks like this, Hugh Cobbs, who sent me this letter. You're going to find folks who send emails who are still trying to hold on to the past, but we cannot let them pull us back. We have to try to bring them along and also look at the greater good. Our folks want real leadership. And I think that we had real leadership coming from the Senate and the House with this flag issue. Our sitting governor did not want to change the flag. He wanted the folks to vote on the old flag. But because we had strong leadership from the House and the Senate and a very strong vote from the House and the Senate, the governor finally came aboard and became part of the chorus in terms of cheering the new flag on. But you have to have dialogue, you have to know the rules of the games, and have to have that passion for change, and change that will benefit everybody in society.
I think I have a couple more. From your perspective, do you believe that with all our country has gone through in social justice over the past year, are we making real progress, or have you seen progress beyond securing the new flag?
Well, I think that's a very good example of social progress we're making. When we had a chance to sit down and have serious dialogue about the old flag and the new flag, we got to know each other. We had one-on-one conversations with our colleagues as individuals, not as elected officials, but as individuals. We got to know them, their family members, and what they stood for, and they got to know what we stood for. And as a result of that, we were able to build up trust between our colleagues, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. And by building up trust, we were able to work on different issues. This session, for instance, as a result of that trust we were able to build up during that social movement this summer, we were able to better fund higher education. We were able to have discussion about Medicaid, expanding that to benefit everybody in the state. It didn't pass this session, but at least we had a dialogue, and we have a chance to have a further discussion on that going forward. But like I said, the beauty of that social change we had this summer was it gave us a chance to get to know each other and work on issues together and set priorities for the state, as opposed to being against something just because I'm for it. We look at it and say that, well, let me look at your idea, see whether it has merit. And by doing that, we're able to set priorities that are going to benefit the different folks in this state. But like I said, that dialogue and also just using that momentum we gained this summer really helps. And also something that's going on. These young folks are playing a very important role in terms of societies around the world. Whenever there's change, young people play a very major role in terms of bringing about that change. I see that happening in Mississippi. Young folk are engaged. They are contacting us by social media and also stopping by our offices talking to us because they got a taste of victory this summer and that lit a fire under them. And I think that because of that, we're going to make even more changes in the state of Mississippi. And I'm very happy that they got involved in summer, this past summer, in terms of changing the flag because of the sacrifice of George Floyd.
Couldn't find the unmute button. Let's see. What gives you energy and courage to keep up working for fairness, inclusion, and sanity in state decision making?
Well, I'm kind of selfish. My two little grandkids. I know that I don't want them to fight the same battles I fought as a child growing up. I don't want them to go to underfunded schools. I want them to have choices where they can better develop themselves. When I drive through my communities, to my district daily, I see folks, and I see that they are looking for ways to improve themselves. So I fight very hard for them because I know they're looking for good paying jobs. They're looking for a strong educational system. They're looking for us to expand healthcare for them. So they are my heart. I know they played a very important role in getting me where I am today. I think about them every day. I work for them. We have to make sure that we stay focused. It's very easy to get comfortable in leather chairs at the Capitol. It's very hard to do that. It's very easy to be winding down my lobbyists, but I'm more impressed by Miss Sally, who might come by my house with a piece of potato pie. I'm more moved by a student who's coming, who wants to learn more about the process. But they motivate me because I know that I'm working with them and I want to make sure they have a chance to dream and make their dream a reality. I want to make sure that we create the environment where they can dream and their dreams can become a reality in our state.
Thank you. I'm going to ask it's a fun question, hopefully. And this is all a statement that's all true about myself. I have never been to Mississippi. So what are the 3 main attractions of why I or anyone else in this talk should visit Jackson, Mississippi?
We have the greatest people in the world. I talked about John Grisham, but we're the home of American music. You heard about Elvis Presley, B.B. King. We have many good entertainers. We're the home of some of the best writers in the world. Eudora Weldy, Margaret Walker, Faulkner, John Grisham. We produce some of the best writers in the world. If you want to look at athletics, we produce our last year athletes also, Walter Payton and some of the others. So, but I think the root of Mississippi is we have some of the best people in the world. They want to do the right thing and they look for leadership. And those folks that we represent love Mississippi. And I think that when folks come here, they're pleasantly surprised in terms of what's going on. One thing we did, I chaired the study committee on that, was to establish a civil rights museum in the state of Mississippi. We knew that other states like Alabama and Memphis were talking about civil rights and talking about our history. But in Mississippi, we did something unique. I chaired the study committee and we had a chance to visit museums around the country. But we are the only state-funded civil rights museum in the country. And that happened in the state of Mississippi. We allocated money to build one of the best museums that tells our story, Mississippi story. We don't try to sugarcoat it. And because of that, we have folks coming from all over the world visiting that museum. And I invite you to come down to visit our museum also and learn more about our history. We are a work in progress, but we are making progress. We're not stagnant. We appreciate the progress we've made in the past, but we know that there are brighter days ahead. And like I said, we have a various improved education system in the state, K-12 and higher education. Our healthcare system is improving. There's room for improvement, but we are making progress there. And also, we are working very hard to keep that brain drain from happening in our state. We're going to lose a few, but we're trying to make sure that the best and brightest stay here to make the state even better. But come here because we have the best people in the world.
Nice. Thank you for that. I'm gonna combine two questions that I got. They're both kind of related to voter suppression. Do you see any upcoming voter suppression policies on the rise in Mississippi? And if so, are there any plans?
Yeah, you know, voter suppression, I got it started in the state of Mississippi. It got it started in the state of Mississippi. After slavery, after the slaves were freed in Mississippi, they became active politically. The males did anyway. They were elected to office, and they were voting in large numbers. They were making a difference in the state. But the power structure didn't like that. The old Democratic Party resisted the change. So what they did, they decided to come up with a very sophisticated case of voter suppression. They decided to rewrite the 1890 Constitution. And in doing so, they decided to talk about conditions that you must meet in order to vote in the state of Mississippi. They said in order to vote in Mississippi, you must be able to read, write, and interpret the Constitution. During slavery, which against a lot of cheap slaves had to read and they couldn't write or they couldn't interpret the Constitution. They said they had to pay a poll tax to vote in Mississippi, voter suppression. A lot of the newly freed slaves didn't have the money to pay that poll tax. They said in order to run for certain offices, your grandfather must have been a registered voter in this state. And their grandfathers were not voting in this state. So voter suppression was something going on when Mississippi adopted that Mississippi plan back in 1890. And also they said that you must be able to interpret the Constitution. And they did that selectively. But our Supreme Court said that that was okay because they didn't aim at it in particular class of people. Said if white folks couldn't meet those standards, it was okay too. But that's how the voter suppression got started in the state. But in Mississippi and Georgia, they're working very hard to suppress the vote. You look at voter ID. You look at making sure that you don't have Saturday voting, different methods of voting. Absentee voting is very hard. It's harder now because of the laws that were passed in Georgia. But you see it happening in the states also. In Mississippi this session, we had a couple of voter suppression measures that were advanced by some of our colleagues. They did so because it was part of the national agenda of the Republican Party. But in Mississippi, we're able to have committees. I serve on the elections committee. We're able to have dialogue about that. We're able to defeat some of those awful provisions that try to advance in this state. But we're able to defeat those because going back to last summer, we're able to get to know each other and see each other through each other's lens. And we're able to let them know that these measures on the surface might look harmless in terms of voter ID and all of that, but how it's going to have a negative impact on a large segment of society. So that dialogue can help very much. But voter suppression is part of the national agenda, and we're working very hard to fight that in Mississippi. In Mississippi, the Republicans have a supermajority, so they can do just about anything they want to do, but as opposed to running over everybody, it's sad to sit down and have dialogue with our Democratic colleagues and trying to make sure that we move this state forward together as opposed to fighting each other where our predecessors did for so many years in this state. We found out that by fighting each other, it's going to make sure that we stay filthier in many areas in this state, in this country. So we are trying to move forward because of new leadership, because of dialogue and getting to know each other, passion for making the state better for everyone.
Oh, I think I might have time for two more questions that I got.
Yes.
It's kind of a follow-up to the last question. Do you think some of Stacey Abrams' ideas that work to bring out the vote in Georgia could take root in Mississippi?
Well, like I said, you're gonna have to work very hard for that. In terms of Mississippi, first of all, we have the largest number of African American officials in any state in the nation. That sounds good on the surface, but if you look at it a little closer, you're gonna find out that most of those African American who are elected from African American districts, majority districts. So race is still a factor in voting in our state of Mississippi. In terms of Stacey Abrams, what she did in terms of motivating folks to vote, I think it can work in Mississippi. It starts with educating the public in our state, letting them know where we are and what the possibilities are. We have to show them where we once were and where we are today and where we can go. And it's going to take a lot of hard work, like they did in Georgia, to flip Georgia, Mississippi, and that can happen. I think that we have a very active group of women in the state. It's Women's History Month, next to last day of Women's History Month. And women can play a very major role in changing things in our state. They can change the dialogue in the state, and that's very helpful. But once we get the women and different groups together, I think that what happened in Georgia can happen in the state of Mississippi. We have very outstanding women like Barbara Travis, one of your Rotary past governors. She's working very hard to make sure that we make things better in our state. And but part of our problem in the legislature is sometimes you have folks who want to hold on to the past. They don't want to go forward. But like I said, by having the dialogue and listening to our public, it's our constituents who can make a difference. Our constituents are asking for and demanding real leadership. They don't want excuses, they want leadership. They want us to move that ball. And by becoming involved in the process, that can happen. And I'm very hopeful that what happened in Georgia can happen in Mississippi. Although we're a deep red state today, we might be purple next election cycle.
Well, thank you. And then you kind of touched upon this in a previous answer, but in the current political climate, compromise is considered a dirty word. Do you foresee a return to where compromise is viewed as working toward the common goal rather than a selling out of one's principles? And if so, how do you see that occurring?
Well, first of all, I think it's better to sell out on the principles. You have to look at common goals and focus on that. Things you can agree on and go forward on that. If you have principles, if you sell out on the principles, there were not strong principles to start with. But I think that no one should ever sell out on principles. They should focus on common goals of what they can do to benefit the population, majority of the folks in the district. But like I said, you have to focus on common goals. You have to have the dialogue, understand why these goals are going to benefit everyone. You have to understand the principles, why you hold your principles. Your principles might be a stumbling block in terms of making progress. But like I said, if you have legitimate principles that were instilled in you and they're based on solid reasoning, don't sell out on your principles. Just focus on what you can do to move the ball forward.
Perfect. I think I can squeeze in one more that I got. So you have traveled to many international places as a senator. What is the purpose of this travel, and do you have a story or two to share from those travels?
Yes, I've traveled to many countries around the globe. I've been very fortunate. My background is unique. I've served as a college professor. I've served as a lawyer for the Speaker of the House. I served as an elected official. And because of my background, I've been called to help provide training in different countries. South Africa is a prime example. Once Mandela was released from prison and became president, I was employed by the State Department to go there to train some of the parliamentarians because they were not in a position to govern because they didn't have the training. So going there going over the Constitution, understanding that, getting to know the rules of the game, and also training a parliamentarian in South Africa was something I really enjoyed doing quite a bit. And also look at Nigeria. They were under military rule for so many years. They always start and stop. But they have a democracy right now, their brand of democracy. But I've been able to go to Nigeria, to different states, and train their legislators and staff members in terms of the process and how it could benefit everyone. And also Central Asian Republic, I had a chance to go to different countries over there, working with their staff members, talking about the rule of law. So I get a lot of a pledge in terms of going, sharing my knowledge in terms of how they can better serve their society. So I've been very blessed to have traveled to many countries and trained different officials, governors, and different officials on down.
Senator Frazier, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us for Conversations in Oakland. I do want to give our thanks, and we'll be donating vaccines in your name in our mission to end polio now. For those of you who are guests that might not know, Rotary is committed to ending polio. We are really close to eradicating it. It was recently eradicated in Africa, and I think we recently started in Pakistan. I think yesterday. I'm trying to look for Brad's face to confirm. But with your time today, Senator, we're very grateful and hope you feel like your time means more with this commitment to public health and ending polio now.
You're welcome to Mississippi at any time. We welcome you here. And thanks for allowing me to be a part of the conversation tonight.